All right.
So I guess maybe we'll wait till we have like a viewer or two.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I guess worst case scenario, we don't get any, but we did
right.
we did promote it, so hopefully people start popping in. This is a nice stressful turn of event. We have some viewers.
All right, excellent. No, we can't hear. Oh.
We won't be able to hear them.
Okay. No, 27. Okay. To those of you who have dialed in, thank you. We'll start in a minute or two. Just we're seeing the number of viewers logging in increase, so we'll wait till that levels off in a moment.
Oh, we've already got lots of questions. How are we? We're at 31. I think we can start.
Okay. 32 now. Okay. Welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for taking the time to log into this webinar related to the Sidewalk Toronto Small Grants Program. We're really excited about having a broad range of participants in that because we see that as a great opportunity to leverage the depth of research expertise and expertise on urban technology that is in the universities and colleges of Toronto and Ontario. And so we're really excited about having as many high quality applications and as many recipients of the grants as we possibly can. My name is Rit Agarwal. I'm the head of urban systems here at Sidewalk Labs. We are trying a new approach to technology today on this particular webinar. So it's my first time using a YouTube broadcast function. So please bear with me as we do this. But we believe this approach has some functionality that will be easier for the widest range of you. And so we thought we'd try it out. What I will do is we will be taking questions via the chat. My colleague Vanessa, who's sitting next to me, is going to relay them to me. I will answer them to the best of my ability. Unfortunately, one of the limits of this technology is Christina Werner, the Vice President for Innovation, Innovation and Prosperity at Waterfront Toronto, our partner, is on the line. We're in contact electronically. If there are any questions specifically for Waterfront Toronto, we will relay them to her and try to get a response back from her to you all. But I think I can speak on behalf of all of us in many respects to the questions that we've received thus far. So let's dive in. The first question I'm seeing is, are we allowed to apply for more than one project? The answer is yes. Frankly, we have not decided whether we would have one team win multiple responses. I think, frankly, that'll depend on the qualifications and the number of applications we get. But certainly, there's nothing a priori that says you can't have multiple applications. And in fact, right now, nothing a priori that says you can't have multiple awards. The next question I see is, what is the expected length of the applications? I know this varies per project, but some guidance would be useful. That's the question we received. We don't have any preset idea. I think I would imagine something on the order of 3 to 5 pages, call it. This is a small grant. It is for a manageable piece of work. And so in terms of the response, that would be, I think, completely acceptable. Further detail or appendices demonstrating work you've already done to date, the other components of the request as outlined in the announcement, for example, curricula vitae of all the researchers, the PI and graduate student or students, that would be in addition to that. But a 3 to 5 page description is what I would benchmark at. And again, shorter or longer, according to your judgment, is fine. The anticipated date of decisions. We are aiming to get notifications out to all the recipients the week of Labor Day, so that this work can begin at the start of the academic year. And we are going to do our best to do that, which is why, in fact, applications are due this Friday. And start dates, yes. So we would start, sorry, the anticipated date for decisions, start dates for projects, and end date. The start date for the project, basically, we are anticipating that you would start as soon as you get notified. We are not imagining that the grants are done on an hourly or daily basis. So whether you start on, this Tuesday or the subsequent Thursday or the next Monday is not a concern to us. It's really much more, can you meet the deadline of having these presentations on November 23rd? And the final, one of the other questions is the end date. We are imagining November 30th for all of the deliverables to be completely finished with an initial due date of November 23rd, which is when the presentations would be. Another one, does Sidewalk Toronto have a price budget for implementation and application of research results? In other words, what costs are considered sustainable or just a cost reduction is satisfactory? I have to confess, I do not understand that question.
There is a follow-up to that saying,
The question of cost-oriented solutions will help the researcher to set a limit. I have to confess, we may have to follow up directly with that individual to understand, because I'm not sure I understand how to answer this question. Basically, but if one interpretation of this question, does Sidewalk Toronto have a price budget for implementation, would be, are we interested in receiving research deliverables at the end of this term that basically imagine a world of unlimited resources? Of course not. That's not the world we live in. These are for implementation in the Sidewalk Toronto project. And so that would have to be taken into account. But really, that's less of a question, I think, for the actual proposal that's due this week than it is for the results that would be due in November. Another question that we received just now is, are the listed research topics the only ones you're interested in, or would you accept proposals? And I think at the moment we are only interested in it's a list of, I think, roughly 20 topics. So it's a pretty healthy list. We've thought about them because those are genuine questions right now that we are eager to answer as part of the development of the Master Innovation and Development Plan for Sidewalk Toronto. I think other topics, this is a long project. Hopefully we will be engaged in this project for many years to come. And I'm sure that over time there will be follow-on research and the potential to explore new topics in partnership with us. But right now, for this small grants project, that is the list of topics that we are interested in.
Some people getting error messages.
Okay, so one thing just for everybody, if you are having trouble submitting questions to the chat, we've had some indication that that's going on. You can email your questions to research@sidewalktoronto.ca. Again, research@sidewalktoronto.ca, and we'll also monitor that account live right now.
I don't see any chats.
Okay. Feel free to ask any more questions if you have them, because we're not seeing any more questions right at the moment. I'm gonna check my email and see if we have any coming into the research account. I'm not seeing any there.
I haven't seen any follow-up from Pablo about his affordability question.
Okay.
the different topics suggested in the document. If you could elaborate on some of those.
Oh, well, actually, we just got a question to research.
Oh, great.
How do you evaluate proposals? What do you consider important for a successful proposal? So I think the first question, in terms of evaluation, we will be using our judgment about the quality of the team, of course. So the extent to which there are demonstrated qualifications and expertise, since this is a short duration grant. Obviously, a qualified research team, a principal investigator, and student or students will need to know a great deal relevant to the topic or have demonstrated research capability related to the field in order to be able to get it done in a hurry. So that'll be one. I think the way the proposal articulates an approach to answer the question or address the research topic that we outlined in the grant announcement is going to be a second one. And then a sense of commitment, track record, other things that will lead us to believe that this work will get done to a high quality on time is an important component to this as well. So those are really the three. What do I consider important for a successful proposal is the second question here. And I think it really is those things. It's around, how clearly do you understand or have an approach towards answering this question, and then can you convince us that you'll be able to get it done to a high quality? That's a question. All right, hold on. Got another couple. One question is, would recent students who have just graduated be eligible to receive the stipend portion? And right now our answer is no. What we have had a number of conversations with colleges and universities. Anyone who has an appointment as a research fellow, a researcher, etc., even if it's an honorary appointment, I think we would accommodate that. But I think we do want people who are currently affiliates of the university or college in question, not just a recent alum. Another question, given the short timeline, it is unlikely that we would be able to receive research ethics board approval in time and thus could not conduct any primary data collection through focus groups or survey. Would you fund applicants that are based on secondary literature review only? The answer to that is yes, definitely. We recognize the constraints of this short timeline. Several of the descriptions, of the topic descriptions in the grant identify that our expected response is a literature review or other secondary analysis. We also believe that there are ways to use consultations with experts that would not avoid a traditional human subjects research ethics review. And so in part, it is the responsibility of the researcher to propose a creative approach that is fully within all ethics standards, but can still get the job done in the time allowed. And so the answer is emphatically yes. Another question, just want to ask whether Sidewalk will allow us to use only undergraduate research assistants. On the document, it says at least one graduate student. And in fact, yes, I think we've gotten some feedback from many of the colleges in Ontario asking us to be open to the idea of undergraduates plus a faculty member. And so I think after that feedback, we have broadened our horizons so that an undergraduate team with a faculty member PI will be eligible. It is worth noting that we would assume that in the grant, both in the proposal and in the delivery, there would be a somewhat higher burden of proof or expectation of the involvement of the faculty member, just on the understanding that, of course, on average, a graduate student should be more capable of doing work with less faculty oversight than an undergraduate. So we will use that. That will be a question that we will consider as we evaluate the proposals. Sorry, I'm getting more emails, so I'm trying to read them as they come in. Another question, I've read the RFP, and as far as I can tell, it does not preclude me from using a graduate student from another university. Can you shed some light on this interpretation? Yes, I believe that's fine. There is no problem. In fact, I think inter-university and inter-college collaboration is fantastic, as long as both participants or all participants in a proposed research team meet that criteria of being affiliated with a university or college in Ontario in some way, and you need to be a student or a fellow, not a full faculty member, in order to be eligible for the stipend component, we will be happy to entertain those that kind of proposal. Another question, can some of the topics be combined that are related? For instance, 23 and 24, as they are quite related and could happen together. Yes, I think that's probably fine. I have to confess, I don't have the list of topics in front of me. If you could pull that up, Vanessa, then I could take a look specifically at 23 and 24. I think that's fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm just checking the list here so I can give you a good answer. 23, housing models and global innovation ideas. Yes, I think that's totally fine. You could imagine combining them. Another related question, also you mentioned that we can apply for multiple themes. Is that just from one institution, or can a PI apply to lead more than one project? I think it's fine for a PI to apply to lead more than one project. Again, we will not preclude, at least not a priori, multiple grants to the same faculty-led team, certainly. Another question, if we are applying for multiple project topics, would you prefer that we submit each one separately, or can we submit it as a package? I would actually encourage you to submit separately. The reason for that is if we know that these can be broken apart, we are more likely to consider each portion on the merits than if they are grouped together. So that would be my suggestion. The second question here, does funding have to go to a current student, or can it be a research graduate? And I answered that a couple of minutes ago. It needs to be somebody who is affiliated either as a student or as a research appointment, a research fellow, etc. A recent graduate with no affiliation with the university, I think, would be ineligible.
Just take a minute to remind any new viewers.
Yes, any new viewers, we've had a handful of people join since the last time. We are having some trouble, I apologize, with the chat function on this on this YouTube technology. So if you would like to submit questions and you can't do so via chat, please just email them to research@sidewalktoronto.ca. We are monitoring that live, and that's what I'm reading from right now. Are you interested in models of community governance that are part of municipal organizations? This question reflects topic number 12. Vanessa, can we just take a look at that so I can refresh my memory? So the answer to that is yes, however, not exclusively yes. So we are interested in basically inspiration and examples that could inform our thinking and illustrate some of the options that we may present in the MIDP when it comes out in early 2019. So we are not in any way uninterested in those that may be part of municipal government or other quasi-governmental organizations. However, I will suggest that I think a complete response to that topic would similarly not only focus on municipal organizations. We would want to be as broad in our perspective on the topic as possible. Another question via email, are honoraria for interviewed subject matter experts allowable under the expenses portion of the budget? And are hardware purchases allowable under the expenses portion of the budget? And the answer to those is yes in both cases. You know, again, if you are proposing an outlandish sum for one or two subject matter experts, that may or may not affect the way your application is reviewed. But the idea that you would pay experts for their time, I think, is totally acceptable. And we will look at that under the context of the entire budget. Another set of questions, can funds be also spent to support staff, not the faculty PI, in addition to students? And are funds allowed for publication and open access peer-reviewed manuscripts or travel to present at conferences? Are the results owned by Sidewalk Labs at the end of the grant and not for researchers to publish or present elsewhere? Two very different questions. So the first one, can funds be spent to support staff in addition to students? What I would say to that is, if it is a small amount of money, and I answered the question a moment ago in terms of honoraria for subject matter experts, I think if it is in that kind of way where you need, I don't know, 3 hours of office support or some sort of management for some, I'm right now not thinking about it. If it is something that you might hire a temp or somebody like that for, I think it was totally fine. If it is, salary support for the departmental secretary or something, I think that would be more difficult for us to consider. But again, I think we will be open to a great deal and we will evaluate them on the merits. The second question is, are funds allowed for publication? And the answer to that is no. This is, we're interested in funding your research, the dissemination of your research beyond the way Sidewalk Toronto uses that will be up to you. However, the second half of this question, are the results owned by Sidewalk Labs at the end of the grant and not for researchers to publish? And the answer to that is no. We are not expecting to own the research output here. This is an academic grant. It is not a purchase of consulting services. And so the IP that you generate will be yours. As part of the grant agreement, we will seek a license to use that research, which could include just using the information, the learnings that you develop. It could be that we actually want to publish excerpts of what you supply to us. But those will not be published in an academic context. And those will always be, if they are published with a meaningful excerpt or direct quote, we will give academic credit as would be appropriate, so that you get the kind of academic credit for your work that you deserve. We will encourage you to publish and present it elsewhere. However, we will ask that you delay publication until the middle of 2019, in part to give us some time to choose how to use it. And if there are presentation opportunities that you have for this information that fall, say, an important conference between January of 2019 and June of 2019, we would just ask to discuss that on a case-by-case basis.
Chat is working again, it looks like.
All right, it looks like the chat is back. We've got a backlog of emails, though, so we're going to finish up the emails, and then I'll turn to the questions that have now made on the chat. Will you make a recorded copy of this webinar on YouTube or a written summary of the Q&A? And I'm going to have to defer to our technical experts.
Well, can you repeat the question, please?
Will you make a recorded copy of this webinar on YouTube or a written summary of the Q&A?
So the YouTube, this YouTube live stream will be recorded, so you can refer back to this entire video stream as if it were just a video on YouTube. We can look into transcribing it as well and putting that up on the documents section of sidewalktoronto.ca.
Okay, but now I recall, yes, one of the reasons to have used this YouTube approach, which, as I said, we're not quite familiar with, is the fact that it's automatically recorded and available to you to refer back to in video form. Sorry, I'm reading one question I just received. Do you prefer targeted questions, example, worker co-op coffee shops for marginalized populations, or broadly applicable, example, models of engagement via community and worker co-ops? That is a good question. So if I'm interpreting this question correctly, it's really around, would we prefer a narrow answer to one of our stated areas of interest, or would we prefer a general one? And I think what I would have to say on this case is we are open to both. as I said earlier, in terms of kind of community models, and there was a question as to whether they were whether we were interested in ones that are affiliated with municipal governments. Our interests in the questions that we released are actually quite broad, so we have a pretty broad range of interests. If there is a specific narrow component of that, I think it is worth applying. Because it is possible that that will be interesting to us, and interesting enough to us that we will want to fund that work. And so I would just say I think if that's a particular interest, it's worth applying. It is not going to be a priori precluded from consideration. Another question, does this include the students who would be working on the project or just the faculty members? Question regarding CVs of all members of research team. Does this include the students who would be working on the project or just the faculty members? I think we will be interested in the CVs of all the people working on the project. Certainly anyone who is slated to receive funding, we would want to see their qualifications. One question, are emeritus professors eligible? And 2 points, would emeritus professors be eligible to be PIs? I think the answer to that would be yes. Would they be eligible to receive the stipend because emeriti are not paid by the university? I guess a game time decision. I'm going to say yes, because we don't want professors funding their salaries, but if there's no salary, then that's probably fine. Another question we just received via email. Will you consider extending the deadline till Monday, considering all these late webinar clarifications? My team is watching the webinar. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we can extend the deadline. I think maybe if there's a particular question that you need resolved, I would encourage you to email us after the webinar. But in general, I think this is, we've got to get the stuff done on Friday afternoon, in part because I believe we have people who are slated to start evaluating them over the weekend. All right, so we are back. The chat is now working, so I'm going to switch from email to chat.
There might be some duplication here, so feel free to skip ahead if you've already answered.
Okay, good enough. Are persons tied to university research organizations who are not students but operating under faculty, staff, lawyers, articling students eligible for the stipend? I think, so the distinction between staff lawyers and articling students, I'm going to suggest that we, so an articling student, while I believe in many cases they are receiving a salary, they are a student. So I would suggest they are still in training and therefore they would be eligible for the stipend. Staff lawyers, if they are employed and not in training, I think would have to be funded, as I said earlier, under the research expenses component rather than the stipend component of the grant. I've got one more over email and I'll switch back to chat. If the institution we work with requires that we include overhead in our budget, is this allowed? The answer to that is yes. Our hope is that, and we understand that at least some universities will forgive or give a lower overhead for small grants like this. And of course, just how much of the overhead will reduce the amount of money that you can pay in stipends and research, but you will have to include that within the grant cap that we have set forward of 10 and 5,000, excuse me, respectively. One question is how to write context for the work. That is a really open-ended question. We don't have a formula there. I think it really is a question around basically what do we need to know in order to evaluate what you're about to say and how the work will be undertaken. You know, and so that could be kind of think about it as a one paragraph version of the literature review you might do at the beginning of a thesis or a dissertation. So we understand that you know the context of work that's going on, or the couple of paragraphs that would be needed to understand what's going on, for example, in community engagement practices is one of the research topics, the community engagement practices around Canada, and demonstrate your knowledge of kind of current topics, current thought leaders, etc. That's what we mean when we talk about the context. So what should we know in order to understand how you situate the work that you are proposing to do? Can we another question via chat. Can we modify a theme to be somewhat narrower than currently stated, e.g. focusing on a subcategory of promising technologies for number 14 in this instance? And so the answer to that is consistent with what I said earlier also about municipal organizations. The answer is yes. You are free to propose things that are a subsection or a narrower version of what is proposed. I think you should note that may affect how excited we are to fund that work, because if it is extraordinarily narrow, that may be important to a broader body of work that you are doing, but it may not be useful enough to us if it is extraordinarily narrow, the way you redefine it. If it is a subsection of a very broad topic that is of value to us, then I think we will certainly consider it. One question, can you explain why the competition is limited to Ontario? I'm in Quebec. I think the reality here is, as much as Sidewalk Toronto is a project that is in that is of course relevant to Canada as a whole, and there will be involvement from the federal government. The federal government is a 1/3 stakeholder, of course, in our partner Sidewalk Toronto. We really wanted to tap the local. There is such a depth of research capacity in Toronto and the area around Toronto that we thought Ontario was the correct way to draw the boundary. I think both Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Labs think this is also a project of global significance, but the idea is really to tap the local research community. And again, if there is some other affiliation or something, we can take that offline and talk specifically. Another question that, in fact, I've answered already, but happy to repeat: are honoraria for interviewees allowable? The answer to that is yes. You will need to include that in the research expenses component of your proposed budget. And as with all proposed expenses, if they seem appropriate, if they seem fit for purpose, that will be great, and will in some ways be counted in your favor. If they seem unnecessary or outlandish or what have you, that may be counted against you if the expenses seem disproportionate to the need.
Christina has a clarification from a previous answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Christina points out that I may have misspoken, that the federal government is a 1/3 stakeholder in Waterfront Toronto, not a 1/3 stakeholder in Sidewalk Toronto. That's correct. Thank you. Let's see. Another question via chat. Do you facilitate having access to the related reports and information that are prepared by other organizations but not publicized? And I'm not sure I fully understand. So right at the moment, we are not going to be publishing what we receive directly. As I said earlier, the IP from this grant program will remain with the research teams. We would be thrilled for you to present and publish that in your own way, according to your own academic interests, etc. And sadly, on your own dime. We will be asking that you defer that until the summer of 2019 to give us the opportunity to digest and use it first. But we are unlikely to actually publish the results of this research because, in fact, we want to make sure that the researchers themselves have the greatest possible control. That said, the IP agreement will include our ability to make public some of the findings or some of the insights. For example, it could be as part of the Master Innovation and Development Plan that is published by Sidewalk Toronto at the beginning of 2019. It could be that we work with you to produce a blog post on the Sidewalk Toronto website, etc. But as a policy, we are not intending to publish everything that we receive through this. Another one, can supporting research members submit under multiple teams, i.e. having your name in an application under multiple proposals? And yeah, I've answered varieties of that question. The answer is yes. There is not a restriction that you cannot apply to multiple as part of multiple proposals. Sorry, I'm not seeing any more coming out of email.
No more in chat.
Any more via chat? Okay. We'll wait a couple more minutes. And I will say too, I see 33 viewers, and we are really excited about the level of interest that this has generated. I'm very grateful for your taking your time on what I know has been very short notice, far different from the traditional academic grant cycle, but the timeline that we are operating under to get this Master Innovation and Development Plan out just requires us to work at sometimes an uncomfortable speed, but we think the outcome is going to be fantastic and worth it. We're very excited about having proposals from as many of you as possible and engaging as many of you as we can.
Thank you.
So we'll wait a couple more minutes in case there are other questions that come up. Yep, all right, just saw one come up via email. Oh no, this was just saying thank you. Glad it's working.
We do have a clarification of a previous question.
Okay.
How sidewalk?
Oh, I see. Okay, so there's a question, and I apologize for having misunderstood the original question that was posted via chat. So the question is really whether Sidewalk Toronto can help research teams access data or information that is not available to the public. I think, except in very limited cases, this is not something that we will be able to do. We are assuming that this is a grant program, and you as researchers and scholars will have the ability to find the information you need. If there are specific pieces of information that for some reason either Waterfront or Sidewalk Labs may have access to, we may be able to facilitate that, but I would not think about that. Like we do not have the ability to go find confidential data sets or convince people to take part in expert interviews or something on your behalf. We really do need to rely on the research teams to be fully capable of delivering the results that they commit to. I think the one thing I will say is if there is a specific piece of data, a specific body of information or et cetera, that you would need in order to do a piece of work, include that in a proposal. If it is something that we think is easy for Waterfront or Sidewalk or both to facilitate, then we will do it. If not, then that probably would lead to your proposal being rejected. I just think it's the reality. We do not have the ability to assist the research teams in an ongoing way. Okay. We're watching both email and chat in case there are any other questions.
Lisa says thank you.
No, wait, one just came in via email. Would you prefer research reports as writing samples for PIs or published peer-reviewed academic papers? to be frank, I don't think we have an ingoing belief. I think frankly, I would suggest that whatever you think, whatever piece of work or writing you think best exhibits your or the team's ability to accomplish this particular task, that's what we would like to see. So if you have a very highly polished, peer-reviewed paper on something that's a completely different approach to a research problem or a radically different topic, that's going to be more polished but less relevant. And in that case, if you have a perhaps less polished or less scholarly research report that is more tightly aligned with what you are proposing to do, I would lean towards that. So I think that's fine. It is up to you. The reason we want the writing samples and of course the CVs is just to understand whether you are qualified and going to be capable to deliver the results in a way that is both academically reliable and most relevant to this Sidewalk Toronto project. Again, we'll wait another couple of minutes in case another email or chat question pops up. All right, I'll give it another 2 minutes, and then we can wrap up if we've exhausted all the questions.
Does that one come in? Yes.
Yes. Has this webinar been recorded? Just heard about it a few minutes ago, so clearly I've missed it. Thanks for joining in late. I appreciate it. Yes, this will be available after the broadcast is over for you to watch via YouTube. So happily this will be available for you to refer back to.
Someone has a question. It's a great paper from all acceptable. Oh, it just came in on email.
Oh, I see. Yeah, let me check. Oh, yes, here we go. All right, another emailed question just came in.
To research at Sidewalk Toronto.
Yeah, I don't know why. Oh, yes. For the publication submission, is a group paper from all 3 participating researchers acceptable, standing in as publication for each? Yes, I think that's fine. If this is a research team that has already delivered work together before, I think that's totally fine. You would, yes, if you're a co-author, you might submit that as your own, so no need to submit 3 copies. All right, I'll give it another 2 minutes, and then we can wrap up. All right, I'll give it 1 more minute in case there's another late breaking question. Oh wait, hold on. We did just get one. Can I donate the grant to a charitable foundation? I think look, if you apply for a student stipend, if you're a student or a research fellow and you're eligible to apply for a stipend, that would be paid as a stipend, so it's your money. You can do with it what you will. So that's very noble if you donate that grant. If on the other, but it is going to be paid to you. We will not be making a grant direct to a charitable foundation. But not the expenses portion, of course, which would require, as it says in the announcement, will require proof of expenditure and receipts for all of those expenses. All right. If there are, we'll give it another minute or so if another question comes in, either via email or chat. All right, we're both just monitoring our email and our chat room there to see whether there are any other questions. No, sorry, it's not an email relevant to this. All right. Well, look, it would be great to think that we've answered all your questions. If a follow-up question does come up, of course, you can certainly still feel free to email research@sidewalktoronto.ca. We will, once again, this video will be available for you to review or to share with others to watch for the first time on the Sidewalk Toronto YouTube channel. And again, I just want to thank all of you for joining. These are thoughtful questions. Obviously, people are really interested in how to put their best foot forward, and I appreciate that. We're very excited about working with the research community in Ontario on this, and we very much look forward to your proposals at the end of this week. So thank you again for your time. Anything else? All right.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.